Hey guys, today we are going to cover everything you need to know about lenses. So this is an old film camera. I'm going to use this to demonstrate what lenses are all about. So let's take it apart. So this is the lens, this is the prime lens, and this is the body. These are two separate things in most cameras, in most interchangeable lens cameras. So this is a prime lens, which means this is a fixed focal lens, and this is a focus ring which you use to control where your focus should be in the picture you are taking. So this lens has a way of controlling the amount of light that is getting into your sensor, and this is called an aperture ring, or it is called just simply an aperture. So you can use the aperture ring to control how much light you can allow to get into the sensor. So the F number on this is from f1.7 to f22. f1.7 means all the light and f22 means a small amount of light. This is dependent on the size of the lens. For example, this f1.7 lens has a large front element and back element. Most cameras usually have same configuration, and all lenses pretty much have the same configuration. For example, this is a 35mm f1.2 from 7 Artisans, and it also has the aperture settings and also the focus dial which you can use. Some are clickless, some are clicked, which means some locks in apertures and some don't. Now this is a single lens reflex camera, SLR for short, which means it uses a mirror and a prism to reflect what the lens sees on the back of the camera. In this case, the back of the camera is film. In digital cameras, it is an image sensor. The mirror flips up when you take an image. This camera uses a mechanical focal plane shutter, which looks like this, which is also called a curtain, which is used to determine how much light or exposure you want to allow the sensor to have. You can control the shutter speed by slowing it or speeding it up. This is also where your digital image sensor lies in modern cameras. So now you have two ways of controlling the amount of light that is getting into the sensor: the size of the opening on the lens, which is the aperture, and also how much time the shutter remains open for light to get in. Now this is the maximum aperture, which is f22 on this lens, and creates a very small opening, as you can see. Regardless of lens design, the effective light that ends up on the sensor is also referred to as t-stops. For example, due to quality of the glass and opening on the rear lens element, on this particular lens, this f1.7 lens is actually an effective t-stop of t2 at f1.7. Now this is a zoom lens, which means it has more glass elements, sort of like binoculars, to change its focal length. Everything else remains the same. Cheap zoom lenses don't have constant aperture, which means when you zoom in, the aperture or the amount of light is lowered. Constant aperture zoom lenses are very expensive. Also, as focal length increases, it has to use heavier and higher quality glass, and very long focal length prime lenses usually have aperture size of f2 to f2.8. These are also expensive, as this Canon 100mm f2.8 lens from Canon. This is a macro lens used to take detailed pictures of close-up objects, millimeter in size. All lenses have a close focusing or minimum focusing distance, and without a macro lens you cannot take pictures of small things. Purpose-built macro lenses like this one are prime lenses, which are, due to having less element and fixed focal length, usually produce higher quality images and is used for portrait photography. I usually use prime lenses for their quality and affordability. They also provide larger aperture sizes, and I use my foot to frame shots. They are also more portable. Zoom lenses are usually bigger in size, therefore less portable, but you will be able to frame your shots without moving. The Fuji X100v has intermittent stops in the aperture ring, allowing you to quickly set standard apertures from just by feel of the ring when using in optical mode. Advanced cameras like this may also have an auto aperture setting, which allows the camera to decide what aperture should be used based on image detection. So what does opening up the aperture actually achieve? Apart from letting in more light, it creates separation between your subject and background, also known as bokeh. Usually we see this in portrait shots. So let's give this a go. So here I'll set my aperture at say f11, and I have put my battery. So when I half press the shutter button, as you can see, the background is in a lot more focus. Okay, as we reduce the aperture, you are going to see that the background is in it gets more blurred. So we take an image at f11, and you can see the background is still quite visible, it's distracting from your subject. And now we are gonna set this at f2, the maximum aperture for this X100v, and take the image again. And so you can see I've put the subject in focus and took a picture, and now you can see the background has been blurred more. So let's compare. This was at f11, f2, f11, f2. So that's the difference. When you open up the aperture, your background gets more blurry and your subject becomes in focus. Due to the simplicity of the prime lenses, you can add more electronics to it and make it into a pancake lens like this Canon 40mm f2.8 lens. This kind of lenses may add a little bit of more portability to your bulky full-frame cameras. You can see the front and the rear element of this lens is almost the same, allowing it to have more t-stops. This f2.8 lens have a t-stop of f2.9, which is very good for this prime lens. Now every lens has a thread size. For this lens it is 52mm. Usually lenses of similar focal length have similar thread size. It allows you to screw in 52mm accessories such as ND filters and CPL filters. So this is a Yashica 50mm and Canon 40mm have the same thread size, allowing me to use the same lens accessories for both cameras. Here I have a variable ND filter, and I'm going to put on this lens so that you can see how it screws onto the lens. Sometimes too much bright sunlight can limit your maximum shutter speed, but you want that creamy bokeh background. This is where you use an ND filter or neutral density filter. This allows you to control the amount of light that is getting into the lens, allowing you to take photos in bright sunlight with large apertures, giving it more bokeh. So if you ask me, this is a must-have for every photographer. Usually the bigger the thread size, the more expensive this lens accessories gets, but never go for cheap ones because it is the first piece of glass the light has to go through, and cheap glass on this is going to affect your image sharpness. Not all lenses have an aperture ring on them because they are digitally controlled. By default, all cameras will stick to the largest aperture to preview the photos with max amount of light, and only stop down to selected aperture when taking pictures. But there is a button on every camera called depth of field preview button, which you can hold down to see what the lens actually is seeing. If you hold that button and move your aperture control on the camera, you can see the aperture change in real time, like this. Now see those aperture blades, the more of those you have, the more rounded the bokeh will get. Also remember that most general lenses move in and out while focusing, and sometimes that leads to focus breathing. It changes the focus length by a small amount, so always focus first and then change your composition. Full-frame cameras have bigger sensors than mirrorless cameras, and that means they need bigger glass and more expensive glass than their mirrorless counterpart, and they have more depth of field. Always align your lens when putting it in, and never leave the sensor exposed like I did, because you will end up with the dust on the sensor. Now many of you already know all this information, but for those who don't, I hope this was helpful. And it will be really helpful if you subscribe to my channel. I am a game dev by daytime, and this is my hobby, and I'm passionate about it, so making YouTube videos helps me keep this passion alive. So it will be really helpful if you can subscribe, and if you have ideas about what video should I make next, please comment, and hope you have a good day. Thank you.